The data analyst role is one of a handful of the fastest growing jobs in the market, with an expected growth of 25% over the next decade. And people in these roles tend to enjoy an average salary of $86,000 a year, with potential salaries going up to $140,000 a year and beyond. Companies need talented individuals like yourself to make sense of all this data in the world that's being created to drive better business decisions for products and services. So how do you land one of these roles? Well, if you have minimal experience or no experience whatsoever, one way is by earning the Google Data Analytics certificate from Coursera. And in this video, I'm going to give you my full review after having taken all the courses associated with this specialization and earning my own certificate. Now make sure to stay till the very end because I'm going to go into a good amount of detail on the following points. First is context on the Coursera and Google partnership and this course in particular, my professional background and why I decided to pursue this certificate, the cost of the program and what you actually earn at the end of it, my full review of each of the 8 courses that you'll be going through, along with some of the tools and skills you'll be learning along the way, and my thoughts on how this is going to help you explore job opportunities, how to interview, and ultimately land an opportunity in data analytics. So before we even get started, if you're new to the channel, my name is Richard Walls and I'm here to help you with career development and personal finance. So if either of those 2 topics are of interest to you, do make sure to subscribe down below and hit the notification bell so you get notified of when I post new videos. So with that said, let's get started. The Google Data Analytics Certificate program can be found on Coursera. This is one of my favorite online learning platforms that I myself have used for years, and I've talked about it on my channel quite a lot. Which, by the way, if you want to head straight there to the Google Data Analytics Certificate program to check it out and follow along with this video, I've got a link in the description below that you can go to. But for those of you unfamiliar, Coursera has been around for a little over 10 years. And in that time, they've partnered with some of the top universities and top companies in the world to deliver and offer these online courses in high demand job fields. And one of those companies that they've worked with pretty closely in recent years is, you guessed it, Google. Back in 2020, Coursera partnered with them to launch a series of Google certificate courses in different high demand job fields like UX design, project management, and data analytics. Google's approach was that we need to have people trained in specific skill sets that make them qualified for entry-level roles that are in high demand in tech. And from that, we now have a series of courses, not just from Google, there's actually some from Meta and some from IBM, but you have all these different courses available to you to make you more qualified for some of those entry-level roles to get your foot into the door at a lot of these major companies. So why did I pursue the data analytics certificate? Partially because I wanted to create some additional content for this channel and expose everyone to some additional education opportunities out there that they might not have been aware of. And having the personal experience of going through all these courses myself allows me to give a bit better of a perspective to my audience. And the other part of it was just my interest and curiosity in analytics. My professional background is in tech, where I've done a variety of different roles ranging from product management to marketing to e-commerce. But the foundation of how I operated in those roles and made decisions was all based on data. In the majority of cases, it was me hunting down the data, cleaning it up, creating my own dashboards so that I could use it, but also for the benefit of my team, and then analyzing the data to make some kind of business decision. And this happened to be a strength for me, and it's taken me quite far in my career. But of course, I always want to learn more, and I was curious about what I could learn from an entry-level course in data analytics. What kind of gaps might I be able to fill in? And when looking at this specialization track, I assumed that I would be fairly familiar with a good deal of the course content, which turned out to be quite true. I was familiar with a lot of the course concepts, the material, and this is why I was able to complete the entire specialization in a little less than a month's time. Even with a family and a busy work schedule, I was able to carve out anywhere between 5 and 8 hours per week. But even though I knew a good deal of this content, I was still able to take away a good number of lessons. It exposed me to different frameworks and ways of thinking about data, and then some of the tools and skills I was actually most excited about, namely getting experience writing SQL queries and learning how to code in the R programming language, which I'll cover later. As far as cost, there are a few ways you can approach it. One, you can purchase a monthly subscription to the specialization that allows you full access to the coursework and assignments for the duration that you are subscribed. And at the time of this video, the cost is $39 per month. Second option is you can purchase the Coursera Plus subscription, which gives you access to the majority of the Coursera catalog of courses, which includes the Google certificate tracks like this one. The cost is $59 per month, or you can pay $399 upfront for the year, which translated on a per month cost ends up being $33.25, so you save quite a bit. Now, I'd recommend the Coursera Plus subscription if you are interested in taking more specializations, more coursework beyond just this Google Data Analytics track. And before you commit to that, make sure you check out my other video where I talk about Coursera Plus. There are some exceptions in terms of courses, so not 100% of the catalog is available, but a good amount of it is, almost all of it. But again, you'll want to make sure, see if there's anything out there that's interesting to you and make sure it's covered. But either way you approach it, what you end up with at the end of this specialization track, you'll earn a certificate of completion in the form of a badge that you can actually share on social media like LinkedIn. And this is something you'd be able to include in your resume as well. So before we look at the courses in depth, the entire purpose of this specialization and this program is to teach you some foundational skills and ways of thinking about data. What kind of data is out there? What data is important and relevant? How to handle and organize it? How to analyze the data to identify patterns, trends, or anomalies? You turn that into key insights which you then present to other stakeholders in the form of visual storytelling with data, so that you can influence others to pursue a certain course of action. And you'll learn the framework, skills, and tools along the way to do exactly that. Course 1 is Foundations, Data Everywhere. This is purely an introductory course, not difficult at all. It's kind of like if you remember your first day of class of a semester, it's more, here's the syllabus, here's what's gonna happen, bye. But it explains what a data analyst does, what a day-to-day looks like. It introduces you to some data analyst frameworks that you'll use throughout the course of this program, and it serves as a preview of what's to come. Honestly, nothing super substantial. It's just really meant to get all the learners on the same page. Course 2 is Ask Questions to Make Data-Driven Decisions. This one teaches you how to think about business challenges and opportunities, and how data can help make decisions to address them. It's a little of what I mentioned before, where you use data to identify patterns, trends, connections, but also anomalies. And from that, you start learning about what you might need to explore a little bit further. But really, the intent with all this data and to understand it is that you're going to be using this to effectively make predictions about the future. Example being, if we take this action, here's the result we can expect based on a variety of different data points in the past that suggest that similar actions may produce similar results. This is also a super basic course, but again, foundational knowledge here gets everyone on the same page, sets the stage. Course 3 is Prepare Data for Exploration. Here you'll learn about the different data sources that exist, whether it be internal data to the company or external data that's supplied by other sources. Also about how to go about collecting data, and this, if you've taken any statistics courses, it reviews some of those basic concepts here about how you go about collecting data in a way that's representative of a population. And then you'll start learning about some of the basics in data structure, like rows and columns. If you've ever used any kind of spreadsheet application like Excel or Google Sheets, all of this should be pretty familiar. And if you're not familiar with that, if you've never had any experience with them, this will at least help you get a little bit more hands-on, and you'll touch on different ways to organize and to sort the data. And as a bonus, and I don't know why they stuck it here, but I guess they wanted to try to incorporate this somehow, but they included some bonus content around career development and networking. It's not a lot of content, but they do give some quick tips on LinkedIn and GitHub, which are two platforms that they introduce you to. Again, if you're not familiar with them, then this is a good introduction, but Hopefully you have used LinkedIn at least before. It's a great professional networking social media platform. Highly recommend. I've got other videos where I talk about that, so make sure to check those out. Course 4 is process data from dirty to clean. Here is where you'll learn about some of the common issues that you'll encounter when working with data. Inconsistency when it comes to labeling or formatting or naming conventions, to name a few. Maybe you'll have missing data, or you'll have data that might have been input incorrectly. And if you have dirty data and you don't do anything with it, you're going to get an incomplete or an inaccurate analysis. So you've got to clean it up. In this module, it shares a few different methods that you can use in spreadsheet apps, but you'll also get some experience in doing some of the cleanup through SQL queries. So this will be maybe your first interaction with SQL. As a data analyst, and depending on the role and the company, you may have to interact with the database directly, and this is where this language comes in. You work directly with a database because in some cases there's tons of data that simply won't fit into a spreadsheet, or at least not reasonably. If you try to do any kind of calculations or run any kind of functions, it might crash the spreadsheet. So it's generally easier to write a little bit of code, few lines of code, and be able to retrieve that data directly from the database and do all these kinds of manipulations in advance so that you can clean up the data before you get the output. So there's actually a number of pretty neat things you can do with SQL in terms of cleaning data up. You can have functions for reformatting, for substituting blank values, correcting labels. All this cleanup work is necessary before you pull the data and you start trying to do some kind of analysis with it. Course 5 is analyze data to answer questions. You'll become familiar with how to sort, filter, and organize in different ways all the data that you're getting. And you can do so in spreadsheets, but you'll also go through some SQL queries that will do the same thing. But not only that, you'll become familiar with some functions that can create new sets of data based on the existing data set. For example, if there's a column of data that shows how many hours each employee worked, and then there's another column that shows how much they're paid per hour, you would learn how to create a function in Excel, Google Sheets, or SQL that creates a new column that shows the total amount paid per employee. And it's just a simple calculation that multiplies those two columns. Pretty simple arithmetic function, but the rest of this course doesn't get much more complicated than that. It does introduce you to some additional functions on how to transform the data. But I happen to like this course because I didn't have a lot of experience with writing SQL queries before, so this gave me a little bit more exposure to what all is actually possible. But to top it all off, they actually have another nice little bonus section I would consider, where it teaches you how to basically find the answers to questions you might have in the future, specifically about writing SQL queries or writing code. How to ask questions with the right terminology to get a more precise answer from Google, presumably if you're using Google to research answers. And this is important because you're likely going to spend a good amount of your career, if you end up going into data analytics, you're gonna be spending a ton of time simply Googling how to do X or how to do Y. And the better you are at searching, which is a skill in and of itself, the quicker it is you'll get the answers you need. Course 6 is share data through the art of visualization. Once you have your data and you've analyzed it, it's time now to put it into these nice, neat visuals that help convey a message and tell a story. Anywhere you work, you're going to have to learn how to influence others. Now, data here is critical, obviously, but how you package and present that story to someone else is every bit as important. Through charts, graphs, and other interesting visuals, you can do exactly that. And the tool of choice in this course is going to be Tableau, which is one of the most popular data visualization tools out there. It's right up there with Power BI, but I imagine Google didn't want to use Power BI in this course because, well, obviously Power BI is a Microsoft product. There's a little bit of competition there, but you'll find a handful of similarities. A lot of these things are conceptually the same, and of course it would behoove you to eventually get familiar with Tableau, with Power BI, and other data visualization software. So in this course, they don't get too in-depth with Tableau. They give you again a brief overview of what is possible and some of the formatting options you have and how you can customize all your visuals. What I didn't really like though is that they didn't actually spend a lot of time on your more commonly used charts and graphs. A lot of the content was actually spent on this geography visual. So if you were, for example, leading a global team and you had sales coming from different countries, there's this nice little geography or geographic visual where it teaches you how to manipulate the map of the world and deep dive into certain regions or certain countries to identify sales from those places. But I've personally never used a visual like that. And again, not to say that it isn't used or can't be used, but I would imagine your typical histogram, your typical bar charts are going to be much more common. I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on that. Course 7 is data analysis with R Programming. This one I was the most excited about. I basically took the entire specialization just so I could take this course. And of course you can take this separately. You don't need to take the rest of it. You can just take this one if you want. But nonetheless, I wanted to do all of it, wanted to lead up to this and have this be the culmination of my learning. I've never coded in R, nor have I ever had to. So this course has a lot of good content on the basics of what kind of code you can write in R. But even better, they provide a lot of resources that are external to this course that teach you about R, that also teach you about the differences and the pros and cons of using spreadsheets versus SQL queries versus R. And you'll learn how to use R to perform, in some cases, some very similar functions to what you could do in spreadsheets or in SQL. But R was designed as a programming language specifically for data visualization. So you'll learn how to perform an analysis on a data set and then have some kind of visual output. And this will typically be in the form of a chart or graph, but you can actually do some very sophisticated visuals I've learned that people have built before with R. And in this course, you'll get exposed to how you can go about customizing the visual and all these different neat things you can do with it. But again, this is just a cursory overview. You don't get a ton of practice with it. That's something you'll have to do outside of this course. But again, this gives you a good foundation. It gives you a really good starting point to begin to ask more questions and begin to learn more. And this course did a really good job. It piqued my interest. I ended up going down a lot of different rabbit holes on what I could use R for and the different applications. So the course delivered in that sense. Again, it is a beginner course. It's not intended for you to learn everything from this course. This is a starting point. And if you happen to like it well enough, then it's a good sign that you should continue learning more, and there's different resources to consult for that. Course 8 is Google Data Analytics Capstone, which is a case study. Now this one is less of a course and more of a prompt on what you'll be doing as a case study. And a case study is simply, if you haven't done one before, it's just a business challenge or a question that you have to address. It's up to you to understand the business challenge, analyze the situation, and come up with some kind of recommendation that addresses that challenge. In this capstone, it gives you 2 case studies that you have the option to complete. These are already sort of pre-prompted. They already have the questions for you. It's all there in the data set. It is something you can download. But you also have the option to do your own case study. So if there's a topic out there that's potentially interesting to you and you want to learn a little bit more about it, you can go that route as well. The only caveat being that whatever it is you do decide to do a case study on, there just needs to be some publicly available data set to work with. But you can create your own prompt, you can create your own questions or business challenges that you in turn then try to answer with data analytics and come up with some recommendation. So you have a lot of flexibility there. Whichever route you decide to go, you'll be asked to upload the final output to some platform. I think the 2 that they recommend are GitHub and Kaggle, both of which work like communities of developers and coders where everyone can share best practices, share different lines of code, different projects. People can share their portfolios of work. And I think Kaggle here is preferred in this case because that's a little bit more oriented towards data analytics. But the course will actually walk you through how to go about creating an account with Kaggle and how to ultimately submit your case study as an output. As an aside, Kaggle has a ton of really amazing resources there. They have their own data sets that you can download and you can use as a basis upon which to write code or play with the data. You can do a lot of interesting things with it. So this is probably somewhere you're going to spend a lot of time after you exit this course so you can get more practice and more experience. Now, outside of doing a case study, there's some content here in this course dedicated to helping you explore job opportunities, how to go about sharing your portfolio of work, which again is through Kaggle or some other means, and as you come across job opportunities, how to best go about interviewing. So it gives you interview tips. Now, even more interesting, and I guess I didn't realize this at first, or it's not very publicized, is that there's a dedicated job search portal within Coursera, and I guess it's sort of in partnership with Google. But here you can create your own profile and you can upload your certificate once you've completed it. And the cool thing is you'll be able to find job listings that match the certificate that you received. So if you got this one, you can find jobs that match data analytics. You can find ones that are for UX design or project management. And of course, you can filter by the common fields like location. Now, this is a pretty cool function, but unfortunately at the time of this video and of the time of me finishing, I didn't see a ton of listings for data analytics, unfortunately. That being said, I don't know if it's a combination of, at this time, there had just been a widespread layoffs in tech. So that may have something to do with it. Or it could also be the case that this job platform is just not very utilized compared to something like LinkedIn. But nonetheless, with your certificate now in hand, or virtually in hand, you'll be able to share it on LinkedIn and have that be broadly publicized. And you'll have also started a portfolio of work on Kaggle. And again, this isn't meant to, your first project. That's not, I don't think, gonna do much for you, but it's with continued practice and continuing to build that portfolio that's going to give you the experience necessary to do well in an interview, to answer some questions that might come up that are technical. So all in, this specialization track is a really great introduction to data analytics. It gives you a good amount of breadth on a variety of topics and skill sets without going too deep into any one of them, which for some beginners may be discouraging if it goes too complex too early on. And it gives you the resources to find your next opportunity. And that's something I really like, is that the course content is not strictly, here's the material, here's what you need to learn. It also does touch on the career development part of it and how to go about finding those opportunities. Besides, the reason you're likely doing this is not so much just for the fun of learning, which may be the case, but it's primarily to get a job in data analytics. And it takes more than just learning the material to land a role. So folks, I hope you enjoyed the review. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about the Coursera platform, I've got a video on that here. And for other education to job pathways to especially get into tech, you'll want to check out this video next. So with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you around.